Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be breaking down Conan the Barbarian, the Dark Horse Comics run. In this video I will be covering the origin volume called Born on the Battlefield, which is going to go through Conan's origin. Now, I wanted to cover Conan the Barbarian, specifically the Dark Horse Comics run, because I think this run is amazing. A few years ago, Marvel picked up the rights again to Conan, and they put out a pretty good Conan series by Jason Aaron. And that was honestly my first exposure to Conan the Barbarian comics, and I really dug it. But I wanted more, so I Googled around and was like, what is the best Conan stuff to read? And a lot of people pointed to the Dark Horse run, so I checked it out, and you know what? It is fantastic. Now, what I really like about the Conan Dark Horse run is that it takes all the original Robert E. Howard Conan stories from the 1930s, and it puts them in chronological order and adapts them, and it fills in the gaps. So we are kind of getting Conan's entire life story within this run, which I think is really cool. Now, the overall Dark Horse Conan run goes on for, we're talking 22 volumes, plus a volume 0, plus a whole bunch of miniseries, plus 5 volumes of King Conan, so there's a lot. I'm not going to be covering it all, but I will be covering the intro volume here, volume 0, Born on the Battlefield, as well as the next few volumes over the next few weeks. So we are going to see some of Conan's early adventures, and I think this is going to make a Conan the Barbarian fan out of a lot of you. Now, this is a very new reader-friendly Conan video and volume here. So we're getting in on the ground floor, and this volume is, honestly, kind of a masterpiece. It is so good. We are going to see Conan's origin from when he was born on the battlefield all the way up into his teenage years. So we're going to meet Conan's mom, his dad, his grandpa, his tribe. We're going to see some early Conan adventures as a child. We're going to see his first kill of an animal, first kill of a human, the first time Conan got laid. We're going to see Conan's first battle. Oh man, really good stuff, really amazing debut volume. Let's dive into it. Conan, Volume 0, Born on the Battlefield. Before I dive into this intro volume, Volume 0, let me tell you all about the history of Conan, as well as the world of Conan in the Hyborian age. Conan the Barbarian, also known as Conan the Cimmerian, is a sword and sorcery hero that was originally written by Robert E. Howard in 1932. Robert E. Howard wrote many short stories of Conan's adventures in a magazine called Weird Tales. These short stories can now be purchased all together in one giant omnibus book. Howard died in 1936. But even after his death, his creation, Conan, has lived on. In the 1970s, Marvel licensed the rights to do some Conan comics themselves, and they published many Conan comics over the next 3 decades. In 1982, Arnold Schwarzenegger starred in the very popular Conan the Barbarian movie, which also had a sequel. Now, the Conan comic license has actually bounced around over the years. Marvel first started producing licensed Conan comics in the 1970s, and they held this license until the year 2000. Then Dark Horse Comics picked up the rights, and they held them from 2003 to 2018. And then Marvel picked up the rights again in 2019, held them till 2022, and then in 2023, a company called Titan Comics now owns the publishing rights to Conan. So if you want some good Conan comics, there is tons to choose from. Although, for my videos here, I will be focusing on the Dark Horse Comics run, which many consider to be the best run of Conan. Now, why I really like the Dark Horse Comics run, and why I think it is a great starting place to start reading Conan comics, is that Dark Horse really had a strategy when they had the Conan rights. They had a vision in mind for what they wanted to do, and they carried out that vision over 15 years, across different writers and artists and creative teams. Their strategy was they were going to adapt many of Robert E. Howard's original Conan stories, and they were going to adapt them in a chronological order, and they would fill in any gaps in Conan's life with original tales. Howard, when he would write his original Conan stories, he would be jumping around all over the place. So one tale would be near the end of Conan's life when he was a king, and then the next tale might be near the beginning of Conan's life, or in the middle. So, as someone that was kind of new to Conan, I really appreciated reading it in this chronological order that Dark Horse was doing. So that's why I think the Dark Horse run is the best run of Conan to read if you really want to get to know the character, because they're adapting the original stories, they're filling in the gaps in Conan's life, and they're presenting it all in chronological order. Alright, so now that you have an idea of the publishing history of Conan and why the Dark Horse Comics run is so special, now let me tell you about the different eras of Conan's life that we sometimes see in his stories. So one era of Conan's life is, at first, the time during his youth when he lived in Cimmeria. Then there was his time as an adventurer exploring the known world. Then there was the phase of his life where he was a pirate, and he was hooking up with the pirate queen, Baylit. Conan would also sometimes be a thief or a gladiator, or he would sometimes lead others into battle, as he had a great strategic mind. And finally, near the end of Conan's life, he would become a king. The king of an area known as Aquilonia. Alright, so now that you know the different eras of Conan's life, now I want to talk about the world that Conan lives in. This here is a map of Conan's world. Conan lives during a time known as the Hyborian Age, which is supposed to be a fictional period in Earth's history. It is said to take place sometime after the sinking of Atlantis, but before the beginning of recorded ancient history. Now, most of the countries or places you see on this map, they're not real, but they're modeled after real places. For example, Stygia here is actually supposed to be sort of the equivalent of ancient Egypt in Conan's world. Iranistan here is supposed to be Iran. Shem is Mesopotamia, Syria, Palestine, and Arabia. Nemedia is a cross between the Holy Roman Empire and Byzantium. Aquilonia is sort of medieval Western Europe with elements of colonial North America. The Pictish wilderness is supposed to be the equivalent of America before Christopher Columbus, so think Native Americans or the American Indian. Now, Conan's homeland is known as Cimmeria. Cimmeria is located sort of what would be Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. Although don't think of Cimmeria as being that civilized. It has been described as there being little worth in this land, mostly a region of endless hills and low, rough mountains, of dusky wooded valleys or dark scrub forests, stony plains upon which little grows, cloud and fog shrouds the land. There are no major cities, no great accomplishments of engineering, and few roads, with only notable man-made structures being a few forts made by Aquilonian colonists. Despite their land being hard and shitty, the Cimmerians cling to it fiercely, and few stray from their homeland. To a Cimmerian, their homeland is their rightful place, though at times it can seem more a purgatory than a heaven. I'll explain more about these countries as they come up in the story, but for now, let's dive into the actual story. Conan, Volume 0, Born on the Battlefield, written by Kurt Busiek, art by Greg Ruth. This volume will tell us Conan's origin story. It encompasses issue 8, 15, 23, 32, 45, and 46. So even though other issues were technically published before these issues, they should really be read first, and that is why they are collected in a Volume 0. So we begin with Conan Issue 8, Born on the Battlefield, Part 1. On the day that Conan was born, his people in Cimmeria were battling some Vanir. Vanir are people that come from the country known as Vanheim. Vanheim borders Cimmeria, located to the northwest of it. Vanheim would be sort of the equivalent of Scandinavia to us, so Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland. While the men in Conan's tribe were battling, Conan's mother, Fiala, was pregnant. Now normally in war here, the men fought and the woman waited, as women did, to prepare food, mend leather, armor, and stitch wounds. But as Fiala was watching from the sidelines, she saw her husband, Conaldar, almost get slain by a Vanir. So Fiala ran out into the battlefield. She yelled, "No, you stinking northern bastard, that's my husband!" And she managed to save Conaldar just in time by stabbing a spear through the Vanir's back and out through his stomach. And moments after that, her water broke as she was pregnant with little Conan. Conaldar, realizing his wife just went into labor, he exclaimed, "Crom's teeth!" Crom is the name of the Cimmerian god. Unlike most gods, he's kind of an asshole. Crom is depicted as a grim and gloomy god, ever watching from atop his mountain in dark clouds or obscuring mists. Despite his stern demeanor, Crom is said to approve of an individual's courage and tenacity, even if the human is too frail to succeed in a major task. Crom disdains worship and is offended by flattery, so even prayers of praise and gratitude will be punished. The only way to show devotion to Crom is through action. He is not so much a benevolent deity, more so a force of nature, reflecting the harsh and unforgiving world of the Cimmerians. Alright, so Conan's mother has gone into labor, and Conan's father exclaimed, "Crom's teeth!" And then he turned to his men and said, "To me, my clansmen, to me! My child comes!" Conaldar's men, they came to him and they made themselves a wall of slashing death. A fight for land is serious, true, but a fight for the life of a babe in those hard and cheerless hills? That's something to fight for, so the Cimmerians drove the Vanirmen back, drove them fleeing into the hills. Half the Vanir died along the way in the field, and while they cut and bled and hewed, little Conan was born on the battlefield. Conaldar commented, "Born on the battlefield, a mighty omen that. What do you think, Fiala, my love? Is he touched by Crom? Will he be a feared Pict slayer and leader of men?" Fiala responded, "All I know, Conaldar, is that he is a fine, healthy boy child, and he's got the most beautiful eyes." We fast forward a few years now. Life in the cold hills of Cimmeria is hard. The rocks give up meager living, only with constant toil. But a babe knows not but what he sees around him, and in time, young Conan began to work, running errands, carrying news, and taking his turns, however brief at first, at the bellows of his blacksmith father's forge. And sometimes when little Conan wasn't working, he would talk to his grandfather, Connacht. Connacht in his youth traveled the land. He saw some faraway places. He worked as a mercenary and a scout. Conan, he loved to listen to his grandfather's tales. We hear the beginning of one of Connacht's tales here now to Conan. He tells little Conan, "Aye, and even to far Ophir, where the girls are dark-eyed and shy, where my brother and I, we stole a wagon load of rich cloth, bright scarlet it was, worth more silver than I could carry." Well, when little Conan wasn't working or listening to his grandfather's tales, he played with the other children. Conan, he got along with most of the other children, but there was one, Donal. Donal would be Conan's childhood rival. Donal was bigger than all the other boys, and he was bullish and slow and quick to anger. One day Conan and the other kids were trying to decide what game to play. Donal, he came over and said, "You think you're so much better than everyone else, eh, Conan? Always telling us what to do and what to be? I'm the biggest, I'm the oldest, I've even started training with the sword. I decide how we play." Conan, being a fairly nice boy, said, "Alright, what do we play, Donal? You want to play Borderers or Vanirmen?" Donal, still somehow annoyed by this, said, "You think you're so smart?" And he tackled Conan to the ground. And then he started beating on Conan, and eventually some of the other kids came and pulled Donal off. But to Donal, he was so much bigger than everyone, he was still keeping up his attack. But all the kids, they bound together, and they attacked Donal in unison. They threw rocks at him, and eventually Donal couldn't win. He yelled at the other kids, "Oh, that hurt, you little... You're all cowards, all just a bunch of bleeding, scared little cowards." Conan, with his friends backing him up, told Donal, "Go away. You're not welcome here no longer." Once Donal left, Conan talked to his friends, and he told them, "We won thanks to our strength in numbers. Remember the Battle of Carrock's Ford? The enemy was strong, but The defenders stood together, and the Aesir, they couldn't break them. The other kids say how Donal's so much bigger than all of them, and he's mad at them all now. But Conan reassures them, saying, well, we'll just be ready for him. We stand together. If he goes after one of us, the others all help. Agreed? And all of Conan and his friends agreed. This story illustrates that even as a small child, Conan had a brain for strategy. In the coming days and weeks, Conan became aware that the other children looked up to him now. They were a band, and he was its chieftain. He could understand that, though he'd never asked for it, but he realized now the adults treated him a little differently as well. One day, Conan was with his father, Conaldar, in his blacksmith shop. Conaldar just finished making a brand new knife, and he asked Conan to deliver it to his customer. So Conan took the knife and went out to deliver it. And as he was walking about, all of a sudden, Donal attacked Conan from behind, hitting him with a rock, smashing it in the back of Conan's head. One of Conan's friends was with him, a girl named Tara. Conan told Tara to go run and get help. Tara did. And meanwhile, Donal continued beating on Conan. Donal, he's yelling at Conan, "You like rocks then, you little nothing? Your ugly cow of a mother. My dad says she was just too stupid to stay off the field during that battle when you were born. And your father, the big man, he fell. He wasn't good enough. And you think that makes you special? My dad says your father's nothing but a scrawny, puffed-up cock, preening for any hen that'll give him a look. And I say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree." Donal, he kept beating Conan with that rock, smashing it on Conan's head. Donal was so much bigger than Conan at that age, and Conan couldn't overpower him. But Conan had to fight for his life. He had to act. And luckily, he had that knife that his father gave him to deliver. Conan, he grabbed that knife, and he slashed at Donal with it, cutting into him. Just a small cut, a warning cut. Conan then told Donal, "Turn and run. It won't be rocks now, not anymore." Donal, he wasn't backing down though. He told Conan, "You don't even know how to use that thing. I'll kill you, you little coward." Conan had no choice. He had to more severely cut into Donal. Donal screamed, and then finally the adults arrived. Conan was standing over Donal, who was bleeding on the ground. The adults were a little bit horrified. Conan, he just walked away, and he told Donal's father, "See to your son. He's hurt." And Conan walked on back home. Conan Issue 15, Born on the Battlefield, Part 2, Wolves in the Woods. It has been 2 years since last issue. Donal, the boy that Conan fought with, is now a cripple, and he is referred to as Donal the Cripple. The other children no longer seek Conan's company. He was not shunned by them, but neither was he one of them anymore. He was part of their activities only when he put himself forward, and he did not do that as often anymore. Conan's village for a while grew prosperous and soft, but that is not what the grim god Crom made the Cimmerians for. So then the Cimmerians faced hardship after hardship. The cattle were stricken with a disease that thinned their herd, and there was now less to eat. Lightning started a forest fire, and it burned down the High Meadows village, destroying most of their winter stores. So now, with winter approaching, the people sought out what remaining food they could to prepare. Conan, he worked hard with his father, often keeping to himself now. Conan was older, so he began to train with the longsword, spear, and dagger. But he was not allowed to join the hunting parties, as they could not spare a man to teach the young, not until full winter, and they would not think to ask a child to join their hunt. This disappointed Conan. Conan, he still enjoyed talking to his grandfather, Connacht. Connacht told Conan a story from his youth. When he was younger, the Cimmerians used to go on raids into the southern lands. When they would raid these lands, they would see great wonders. It was not enough for Connacht, though. He was not content with stealing food, metal, and cloth. He sought adventure and the glory of battle. He wanted to go further and further. But he was told by the others, "Crom cares little for adventure and nothing for glory. And in time, the elders grew weary of all the retaliation from the Aquilonians in the south. So they told Connacht, "No more, we must end this madness. Silks and opals, what are these things to us, to Crom? We need men to hunt, to dig ore, burn charcoal, fight our enemies." So Connacht reluctantly agreed. He tried to be a good Cimmerian, to fear Crom, to be as the others, but he grew irritable. He felt confined, imprisoned, and in a rage one night, he killed a good man. A blood feud was the result. And because of this blood feud, Connacht, he was forced to leave his time in Aquilonia as a mercenary and scout and return to Cimmeria. And in Cimmeria, he found a home with a tribe in the north. And that is how he came to settle here. Connacht tells Conan, "Crom has shaped you, Conan, as he shapes us all, to his own cold ends. If he has shaped you differently from the others around you, he has shaped you differently and there is no fighting it. To force yourself away from the gods will bring only sorrow. I see your loneliness, lad, but be patient. It is hard, I know, but you will know your place when you find it." Eventually, the harsh winter came, and food was low. Some of Conan's friends died in the cold. A few families starved. Even old Connacht took ill, but he endured it. The Cimmerians in those hard times would say, "Crom's blood tests us. He made us strong. They make us harder through struggle." Eventually, the winter passed and the spring came. And one day in the spring, they found something suspicious. Tracks in the forest. Tracks of booted feet. 2 sets of tracks only, one large and one smaller. And animals. A donkey at least. The Cimmerians assumed that there must be spies near them. Maybe Bosonians or Vanir, or perhaps Aquilonia is here to collect their iron. Cracked, the war chief, he told his men, "We'll quarter the forest and flush them out. I'll take 3 men to the center." Little Conan, he offered to help. He said, "I know woodcraft, I can..." Cracked shut Conan down, though, and told him, "No, Conan, you're growing and you'll be a fine warrior one day, but this is a job for men." So Cracked and the search party, they went out into the forests for the next several days, trying to find the source of these tracks. They searched and searched, but they found no spies, no trace of a dwelling. One day, Conan, he was searching through the forest, and he came across their war chief, Cracked, and he was trapped under a log, severely injured. Cracked, seeing Conan, yelled out, "Conan! It was a deadfall, lad!" A deadfall is a name of a kind of trap for animals consisting of a heavy board or a log that falls onto its prey. Cracked explains that he was at the top of the hill, and he saw the deadfall, and like a fool, he thought to rest on it. But his weight sent them both over, and in the tumble it speared his thigh. So now Cracked is trapped under this thing. He thinks that maybe the 2 of them together can lift it. Conan, he tries, but both of them are not strong enough. Cracked tells Conan to go run to the village and bring 4 or 5 men with axes to cut him out. But then all of a sudden, Cracked, he grows nervous. He hears something. He hears some wolves in the distance. Cracked tells Conan that was a scout calling the pack, letting them know that he's sighted prey. If I wasn't wounded, they would never come. "Go home, boy. You can't save me, and the tribe can't afford to lose 2. Not now." Conan insists he can help, but Cracked just yells, "I said go, lad!" It was too late for Conan to retreat, though. The wolves came. There was a dozen of them, and they were hungry from the long winter. Wolves did not normally attack men, Conan knew this, but when they were this hungry, anything helpless was prey. Cracked still tried to talk Conan into running, but Conan, with a small knife, stayed to fight the wolves. Conan planted his feet and prepared to fight. He growled back at the wolves. Eventually, the wolves saw this as a challenge, and any challenge to the pack must be dealt with by the pack leader. So eventually, the leader of the wolf pack squared off against Conan. and the wolf tackled Conan, and the two of them started rolling down a hill. As Conan and the wolf were falling down the hill together, Conan with his knife was stabbing into the wolf, and the wolf with its paws was slashing at Conan. Conan managed to stab the wolf a few more times, but then eventually Conan had to drop his knife and try to hold his hands around the wolf's mouth to stop the wolf from biting into him. Conan would only be strong enough to hold onto it for a few seconds. He eventually felt his grip slipping. Conan had to do something, so he ended up taking a bite out of the wolf's neck. The wolf's fur was foul, rank, its blood hot and salty, but Conan, he succeeded in killing the wolf. He ripped out the wolf's throat and was covered in its blood, but he killed it. He killed the wolf pack leader. And the other wolves, they left Conan and Cracked be. Once they were safe, Conan asked, "Cracked, are you all right?" And Cracked replied, "Conan, crumb, boy! I've never seen anything like it." With Cracked now safe from the wolves, Conan went back to go get help. 2 nights later, with Cracked safely back in their camp, Cracked invited Conan to come drink with him. Even though Conan was just a small boy, Cracked told him to sit, and he offered Conan some Zingaran brandy. Zingara is to the south of Cimmeria, just past Aquilonia. It is sort of the modern-day equivalent of Spain. So Cracked offers Conan this brandy, and he drinks it. Cracked tells him, "You saved my life, I'll not forget it." And little Conan poured that brandy down. The brandy was fire in his throat, in his lungs, but he did not let himself cough and splutter, much as he ached to. He swallowed, smiled, and passed the skin. They were all there that night, all the hunters and warriors of the tribe. And they treated Conan like a man that night, like one of them. And they passed the skin, and they told tales. Tales of battle and women. Tales of gods and heroes. They told lies, told bawdy tales, and sang of men long gone, of ghastly deaths, and of feats of daring. And they passed the skin of the brandy, and Conan, he was now one of them. This rough laughter, the goodwill of the tribe, so rare, so hard won. It was all Conan could want from life, all he could ever want. The next day, Conan was allowed to take part in the searching party that was trying to find the spies that maybe lived near their camp, the spies that were the source of the tracks they found. Cracked, he gave Conan a horn and told him to go into the north reaches. He'll move faster alone. And if he finds anything, give a blast to that horn and they'll come running. Conan, he ran off with his orders and said, "I will. I won't fail you." As Conan was searching for these supposed spies, he eventually heard some rustling. So Conan, he took to the trees to get a better viewpoint. He climbed one, and he looked down from above. And there, all of a sudden, he saw it. The supposed spies. There was 2 people. One of them was an old wizard named Alcibiades, and the wizard's daughter, Ariane. Apparently, the wizard Alcibiades cast some sort of shield spell to protect them from other wizards finding them, as well as to protect them from being seen or heard from people nearby. The reason Conan was able to see them, though, is because Conan climbed the tree and was looking at them down from above. The shield spell did not block the view that way. Alcibiades and his daughter did not seem like a threat. In fact, they were hiding from some wizards from their own camp. Ariane asked her father, "What of the Cimmerians? Will they find us?" Alcibiades answered, "They don't know we're here, and if we don't bother them, they won't bother us. Now come on, girl." Conan in that tree pulled out his horn. He was going to blow it to summon Cracked and the rest of his men. But Conan, he stopped himself. He looked at the girl, Ariane, and he kind of fancied her. So he instead just kind of waited. He waited a long time, and eventually, Ariane and her father got further and further away. And Conan, he just let them go. And afterwards, he went back to the village and told correct he saw nothing, and nobody questioned him further. Conan Issue 23, The Battle of Brita's Vale. Conan is older now, and he has become a full-fledged hunter, bringing many animals back to his tribe, and he is progressively hunting even more dangerous game. Over the years of Conan's many hunting trips into the forest, he would continue to secretly observe the Aquilonian wizard Alcibiades and his daughter Ariane. They made a home for themselves in the woods, a home that remained hidden thanks to the shield spells by the wizard. But Conan knew how to see through these spells by observing from high trees. They would move their camp often, but Conan would keep track of them, even if it added long hours to his hunting trips. But it was all worth it to Conan just to see a glimpse of Ariane and her chestnut hair. Her hair was so different from the coarse Cimmerian hair, and she had shining eyes. It was worth the effort to see. One day, a disease swept through Conan's village, and Conan, he took sick as well, and he could no longer hunt for a while. He had to rest. So as he rested, his grandfather Connacht would tell Conan some more tales. Connacht, he would tell Conan the tale of the Battle of Brita's Vale, where they taught the Aquilonians to respect Cimmerian valor. Connacht tells of some bloody battles, where the Cimmerians killed thousands of Aquilonians and beat them back. Eventually, when Conan healed, he wanted to go on a little trip when he hunted. He wanted to see what lies beyond the hills that he's known since his birth. He wanted to see Brita's Vale, where his grandfather battled. This was normal behavior back then. Conan's dad encouraged it and said, "Good for a man to test himself against the wild. You'll do well, son." When Conan explained he was going to Brita's Vale, his father warned him, saying, "A warning, Brita's Vale is steeped in death and has never been right. Dark forces seep from the blood-soaked ground. The Vale attracts wizards, madmen who feast on human flesh, and worse, they say." Conan, not one to back down from danger, pressed on. As he walked further south, the trees began to change. The land grew dark, dry, dead, and barren, and at the top of a rise, he saw the aftermath of the battle that happened many, many years ago. Many of the dead Aquilonian soldiers' skeletons were lying about. Some of them were feasted on by wolves. Conan, as he scanned the battlefield, he saw what looked like a gnarly old-looking woman. Conan began to run over to her. He didn't like how she seemed to be picking at a corpse. As Conan ran over to her, he tripped, and he breathed in the blood of the slain, and it caused him to cough and choke, and his head swam. He had visions that went dark and red, and he started seeing images of the Battle of Brita's Vale. Soldiers fighting and stabbing and killing each other. The battle was everything his grandfather said. Struggle and pain, battle and bravery and death. The men, they stood and fought and died well. He saw it all. Saw the horsemen drive their steeds into a thicket of blades, their lances piercing, swords rising, falling. Conan, he saw the archers drawn loose, saw the men-at-arms plant their feet and cut down those who sought to topple them. Men whose hearts were as strong as their arms, men who would die before they would run. Conan, he saw it all. Eventually, as Conan was hallucinating from the dust in the area, he got attacked by a cannibal. His father did warn him that there were madmen who feasted on human flesh here. This particular cannibal was a man named Rhaegar. Conan began to fight back, and Rhaegar continued to attack. Rhaegar, attacking Conan with a knife, screamed, "Food for Rhaegar! Food you are! Sleep! Sleep in Rhaegar's belly!" Rhaegar jumped on Conan. The two of them began rolling down a hill. Conan managed to grab Rhaegar's knife and stab Rhaegar with it, cutting out his intestines. In the end, Rhaegar died on top of Conan, and Conan had to crawl out from under him. Rhaegar's blood and gore oozed all over Conan, and his body was heavy, sticky and soft, pinning Conan to the dusty ground. Conan managed to crawl out from under Rhaegar, and he lived. Conan had faced an enemy, set on killing him, and now he lived, and his enemy lay dead. Other than animals, this would be Conan's first kill. Conan, he stood over Rhaegar's corpse, and he screamed out into the void triumphantly, "Yeah! Ah!" Conan then returned home. And as Rhaegar lay dead, another cannibal ran over to him. The cannibal commented, "Good bones, very good bones, fresh." The cannibal then, looking at Conan, said, "His first man kill, that one. The smell of it is all over him. First kill, first in a trail of bones, that one. First in a long, long trail. The cannibal then turned back to Rhaegar and continued its work. Conan issue 32, Wild Cimmerian Bull. Conan, now a teenager, is hooking up with one of the village girls named Cowlin. Conan says bye to her. He has to go do some hunting. As he leaves Cowlin's hut, he sees two local teenagers his age. There is Donal, whom was Conan's childhood rival, the one that he crippled. And there is Guile as well. Conan, who's off to go hunting, tells them, "We can't all be tanners or smiths. Ho, Donal, Guile." Donal, whispering to Guile, says, "Tss, that Conan. I'd like to twist his guts on a pole. He knows I've been courting Cowlin, and what does he mean we can't all be tanners?" Guile, defending Conan, says, "Easy, Donal. His father is a smith, just as yours is a tanner. You know he means nothing by it. And as for Cowlin, if you wish her to be faithful, that's between you and her. Beyond that, what of it? It's Conan, that's all. It's just Conan." Conan he mostly kept to himself. He was no longer thought of as a child, but not yet still a full man. Not yet. Conan was very solitary by nature, but he had his place. He was of the tribe, if rarely among them, and he had the respect of the young and old. And why not? He was the tribe's best hunter, and he never shirked when trees needed felling or cattle skinning. Conan, he was young, he was strong, and he was handsome enough, or at least the girls found him so. Conan, he went to go hunting out into the woods, but he actually had ulterior pursuits today, more than just beef or venison. Conan went to see the girl, Arianne. Turns out, at some point over the last few years, Conan eventually introduced himself to Arianne, and they formed a romantic relationship. And we see them now in Arianne's hut, and they are making love, and Arianne is screaming, "Oh, Conan! Conan!" This was Arianne's first time. Conan asks her, "Was there blood? Did I hurt you?" Arianne answered, "A little blood. I think a little pain at first, but now I am a woman at last." Conan, smiling, asks, "And your father?" Their father does not know about them. Arianne answers, "He'll be gone for hours yet. He's seeking a lichen for his spells that only grows on the north-facing cliffs, leagues from here. So we have time. Can we do that again?" We now learn a little bit of Arianne's father, Alcibiades. Alcibiades was a great court wizard that was in service of the king of Aquilonia. He had created spells that sniffed out copper, tin, and iron, resources always in need to expand the great Aquilonian empire. But Alcibiades, he had little interest in the spells once he perfected them. They were finished works, and he wanted to pursue new mysteries. Eventually, Alcibiades refused to perform the spells to find the various resources in need, and the king did not like this. The king told Alcibiades, "Understand something, sorcerer. I have other wizards who can render you helpless at my command, and no man in my court says no to me. You will forget your foolish games with powders and mushrooms and ashes, and you will find me or die. Take him away." Alcibiades was a proud man. He would not stoop to a life as a dog, sniffing out treats for his master. He was no fool, though. His wife had died when she would not submit to the king's pleasures. So Alcibiades knew that the threats were real. So he had no choice but to flee Aquilonia, and he took his young daughter with him, and they came to the woods of Cimmerian, where spells of his creation could hide them from the king's wizards, and he could live a life undisturbed and pursue his own desires. Alcibiades and his daughter Ariane have lived in the woods of Cimmerian in secret for years now. The only one knowing they are here was Conan. And at one point, Conan introduced himself to Ariane and they hit it off. Back now in the present day, Conan and Ariane are lying in their hut after just having made love a second time. Ariane compliments Conan, saying, "Oh, when I was very young, I heard my mother laughing with the other ladies, and they referred to a man as a real stallion. I never knew what they meant until now." She then asks Conan, "But I am not your first, am I?" She was not to Conan. Conan, not sure what to answer, said, Ariane, she just continues and says, "Oh, don't be bashful. We women have a sense for these things." "Who was she?" Conan answers, Just a girl in my village." Ariane laughs, says, "Just a girl? I'd love to see this girl. Does she have hair that burns like fire like mine, or eyes that pierces the summer sky?" Conan began to chase Ariane with some playful teasing, and they were running around the area where Ariane lived. But eventually Ariane was running a little bit too far away. She was nearing Conan's village where the shield protection spells would no longer hide her. Conan was warning her that she was getting too close. Ariane replied, "I want to see the girl, you silly stallion, the girl who won you before me." Ariane then tripped and fell down a small hill, and then all of a sudden she was face to face with a bull. Conan, he wanted to protect his lady, so he ran down and tried to yell at the bull to distract it and draw it over to him. Conan yelled at the bull, over here, you mad-eyed devil!" Ariane, she remembered that her father gave her some sort of pendant. The pendant would detect if Ariane was ever fearful for her life, and it would summon her father to protect her. For now, though, her father did not come. Conan, he continued to lure the bull and wrestle with it. Conan was stabbing the bull, and he managed to swing over to the bull's back and was riding it. Conan could not control the bull, though, and the bull ended up charging through Conan's village. Conan, continuing to wrestle and stab the bull, eventually managed to kill it, right in the village square. Ariane then ran over to see if Conan was alright, but then all of a sudden, the townspeople in Cimmerian there saw Ariane with her strange-looking hair unlike any of theirs. The townspeople grew worried. They yelled out, "An outsider! A spy! Aquilonian from the look of her!" Conan told the people, "Unhand her! This girl is no threat to us." One of the village people told Conan, "It is not for you to decide. You know our laws. You know the plainsfolk will take our hills if they can." Someone grabs Ariane and puts a knife to her throat. They ask her, "Speak, girl. Who's with you? How many are they? Where is your camp? Answer, or it will go hard for you." Conan, trying to reason with his people, says, "Unhand her. I have said she is no threat. I am Conan, and I speak true. She has lived here for years, and she will never bring danger to us." And just as Conan says that, lightning strikes down from the sky, and Ariane's father, Alcibiades, appears in the town. One of the villagers throws a spear at Alcibiades. Alcibiades uses his magic to make the spear explode before it hits him. Alcibiades then addresses the crowd. He says, "So, you attack me? You lay hands on my daughter and threaten her? Sully her innocence with your vile touch?" He's looking at Conan when he says this. Alcibiades now demands that his daughter come with him, and before he leaves, he tells the townspeople, "You are all ignorant, violent, uncouth pigs. We offered no harm, ever, and you repay us with this? You abuse an innocent young girl?" Ariane tries to explain the situation. She says, "Father, it wasn't like that." But Alcibiades just says to his daughter, "Silence!" Alcibiades then tells the people of Cimmerian here, You have great deposits of copper, of tin, and iron in these hills. You have land for grazing, wood for building. I will not waste my breath on you, but Aquilonia, oh Aquilonia, will hear of these hills. Enjoy their wrath while you still live. Alcibiades, then using some magic, makes himself and his daughter disappear. Once things have calmed down, the townspeople grow upset with Conan. They ask him, Conan, outsiders, wizards, Aquilonia? They've been here for years and you said nothing? This is madness. Conan, he starts getting defensive. He's trying to argue with the townspeople, trying to make them hear reason. One of Conan's other childhood friends, Chad, kind of surprises Conan from behind. He tells Conan, Conan, answer me. Tell me, why this happened? How the hell did this happen? Tell me, Conan, tell me. Conan, in a rage, swings around and he punches Chad in his neck. Conan did this because he was discombobulated. He wasn't thinking. He was in a rage. And he hit Chad so hard that he accidentally killed him. Donal, standing over Giles' body, says, he's dead. The villagers then tell Conan, murderer! You killed him! Some of the other townspeople try to calm everyone down. They say, no, don't. It's Conan. It's Conan. Conan, issue 45, Venarium. Last issue, Conan accidentally killed one of the other villagers, a man he knew from a boy named Chad. Conan felt terrible. He went to go receive his punishment. He went to Gial's father. He told his father, I took your son. I owe you his toil, his share of the hunt, his obedience. I come to pay. Gial's father told Conan, we know you loved him, Conan, and we know you did not mean for this to happen, but we do not want the reminder of your face. I have other sons who will toil and hunt. The blood debt is refused. Conan, disappointed, did not return to the village to sleep in his parents' house. Instead, he chose to live in the clearing that Ariane and her wizard father had made their home. He still hunted, but alone now, where his black melancholy would shroud him and him alone. He delivered most of his kill to the village at night, and he would give an extra share to Giles' father's house just before dawn, when it would be found before wolves or foxes smelled it. Giles' family accepted this payment. Conan was tortured by his thoughts for many a while, but eventually a distraction came. Last issue, the wizard Alcibiades said that he would tell the Aquilonians of all of the minerals and goods that were for the taking here in Cimmeria. Because of this, the Aquilonians had started to move in on Cimmerian territory. They have started to consider this land theirs, and have actually began to settle in, which does not sit well with the Cimmerians. We see a scene now of some Aquilonian settlers running into 3 Cimmerians. The Cimmerians tell them that they are not welcome here in these hills. The Aquilonians reply, almost too easy it is. Only 3 Cimmerian cockerels, stupid as they are ugly, not knowing that we are allowed to walk these hills, as we have the full protection of Aquilonia? The Aquilonians, cocky, says that they will kill 2 of them and leave the last one maimed and send him back as a message to his disgruntled, unwashed brothers. Conan was hiding in some bushes with some other Cimmerian soldiers, and he bursts out when he hears this. Conan, he yells out, a message? And what would that message be, man of Aquilonia? Or are you such fools to think no one would hear you crashing through the brush like blind, stumbling oxen? The Aquilonian, startled, replies, by Mitra's grace! Mitra is the name of the god that the Aquilonians worship. He is the most common god worshipped in the Hyborian kingdoms. His identity is that of the defender of the good. Conan attacks the Aquilonian soldiers and yells, you are told these are Cimmerian hills. And a Cimmerian walks anywhere he likes, needing no protection but what he wields in his own 2 hands. Conan and his brothers kill all of these Aquilonians. and they leave them as a message to others that may come. As Conan and the others walked, they eventually stumbled upon a fort named Venarium. We see on the map of the Hyborian Age here, the Aquilonians had progressed into Cimmerian territory, and they established this fort here, a fort in the southern area of Cimmeria. This would be their base of operations where they would try to continue to expand their borders and colonize more areas. That night, Conan and his people had a meeting to discuss what they should do about these Aquilonians moving in. At that meeting was a man named Gwyd of the Picked Killer clan. He was their war leader. Also among the men was Donal the Cripple, the person that Conan crippled all those years ago when he was just a small lad. Donal, maybe because of his crippled leg, making him unfit to hunt, had grown to be a thinker, and a good one. He saw twistily and further ahead than most. As Conan listened to Donal talk strategy, he was impressed by him. Conan wondered, all those years ago when he crippled him, had he ruined Donal's life or perhaps awakened it? Conan would never know. Another day, Conan and his grandfather, Connacht, were at a high peak, and they were surveying this Venarium fort the Aquilonians established. Conan asked his grandfather, "What do they want here?" Connacht answered, "They want what anyone wants, the land itself, and the treasures it holds. Earth to cultivate, forest to hunt, tin, copper, and iron from our hills." Conan responds, "They want it all." Connacht, then pointing to some things in the distance, says, "This Venarium, it means hunting town in their language. It's just the start, just a camp for hunters, farmers, and soldiers, but you see out there? The stone they've quarried. That is for Fossarium, a mining town, which they will build in the hills above the river, sinking wells for their water. They have come to stay and intend to fight until we give up." Conan, he questions, "They expect us to quit? Do they know nothing of us?" Connacht replies, "I saw their ways when I traveled among them, scouted for them when they took Bosonian lands from the Picts. They dug in, drove the Picts off, and still hold that land." Conan, listening to this, says, "Yes, well, we are not Picts." When you hear the word Picts, that is sort of the equivalent to what would be the American Indian or Native Americans in our world. Connacht explains to Conan, "They'll learn soon, lad, that we will not roll over easy, but they have their courage and pride, and a king who has set them to take this land. They'll not learn swiftly." Conan asks his grandfather, "It almost sounds like you admire them." Connacht to this says, "I do. I admire their cities, their fine cloth, their food, their pottery, their women. They have built wonders, these men, but they have their place, and they can't have ours as well, eh? They can't have ours." Over time, the Cimmerian side grew. More clans came to help them defend, nearly 40 in all, and they all pledged themselves to Gwyd, the war leader. Together they killed dozens, scores of Aquilonians, but yet they did not go. The clans smashed the aqueduct and dammed the river to drive the Aquilonians out by thirst, if hunger would not do it. But still the Aquilonians did not go. Many died, but more came to replace them, and still more, and they hunted and planted and quarried stone. The Aquilonians, they held out. Eventually Conan began to wonder. It was the Cimmerian way to fight out in the open, not from behind walls and forts. But yet their enemies, the Vanir, the Picts, the Aesir, even the armies at Brita's Vale, they met them all on the field of battle. Conan began to question their war leader Gwyd. Was he waiting for the Aquilonians to come out and fight strength to strength? Did they even intend to, or did they plan to just simply hunker and wait? Wait the Cimmerians out, wait until the clans grew bored, or began to fracture over disagreements, or were needed in their home territories. One day, Conan wondered where Donal was. He hadn't been seen for a while. So they searched the area, and eventually they found him. When Conan saw Donal, he exclaimed, "Crom on his mountain!" Conan saw Donal, nailed down to a tree with his intestines opened. Donal, though he was still alive, but barely, he let out a small, "Conan." Conan told Donal, "Try not to speak, we'll get you down." Conan immediately began to rush to bring Donal down from the tree. Conan and Donal, they never liked each other, and with good reason. Donal had been set on murdering Conan before Conan crippled him. But all that was forgotten in a heartbeat. They were brothers against enemy intruders. Conan, he felt a surge of pride at Donal's strength, that he did not die on the tree, and he did not die as they were pulling him down. He did not die until he was free. Donal explained to Conan, "They hid. They waited until we had passed. Then they set on us from behind." Conan carried Donal's body back to Gwyd, the war leader. Donal had since died. Conan, he yelled out, "Gwyd! We do not fight Pix, Pict Killer. We do not fight Aesir. This is what we gain from waiting. This and more like this. How many dead friends, Gwyd? How many dead brothers? They will not come out and face us. They wait for us to grow bored with them. They have claimed this land for their own, Gwyd, claimed our land. And we can kill them, and they just send more. They will not be scared out nor worn down. They will not be starved out. They will not be burned out or harried out. They will not run. Only one way, my brothers, one way and one way only will get them gone. The only way to end this is to cut them out." Some of the Cimmerians began to cheer Conan, saying, "Aye, aye, the lad speaks true." If the Aquilonians would not meet the Cimmerians out on the battlefield, it was time for the Cimmerians to go into the Aquilonians' fort and cut them out. And with that rousing war speech, immediately Conan and the rest of the clan began to charge into battle. They had waited long enough. There would be no warning, no advance word, no preparation for the Aquilonians to discover. Some cut saplings for rude ladders were done. Some simply just grabbed their weapons and came. The clans were called and the clans came. There would be no warning. And we see now the Cimmerian clans just running and charging full speed as they could at the fort. Conan issue 46, Over the Walls. The Cimmerians are charging at the fort, trying to scale the fort's walls. The Aquilonians are pouring hot oil that they have lit on fire, trying to burn the Cimmerians down. Some of the Cimmerians died, but some just picked up some scars and more pain and rage and hatred. Many of the Cimmerians' ladders were destroyed, but the Cimmerians didn't need ladders to climb. Ladders only made things faster, and only a little faster at that. We see Conan and some of his fellow Cimmerians have successfully climbed the walls of the Aquilonian fort, and then they begin fighting the Aquilonians inside their fort. We see Conan screeching out a war cry as he decapitates some soldiers with his sword. The Battle of Venarium had begun. Conan's grandfather, Connacht, fought with Conan side by side. As Conan continued killing more soldiers, he screamed out, "Ah, for Donal! For Guile! No further, men of the Southlands, no further!" Donal the Cripple had been a childhood enemy of Conan's, and became a hobbling cripple at Conan's hand, but it was the Aquilonians who blood-eagled him, opening his ribs to the air. And Guile. Conan did not know why he screamed out Guile's name, Guile who had died in a moment of Conan's own rage. He did not know why he screamed their names. They were gone, lost, and everything had changed. Everything had changed, and the Aquilonians would die for it. Long through that night, the slaughter continued. The Aquilonians tried to form shield rings to use their battlefield tactics, but those were meant for open fields, and there was little room to assemble or maneuver within the fort. They died. They took many with them, but they died nonetheless. No quarter was given, not for farmers or stonemasons, and not for priests, and not for women or children either. Were not Cimmerian women and children killed in the taking of this valley? Were not tribal elders cut down? Had they been spared? No. So the Cimmerians would not spare the Aquilonians either. The Aquilonians then moved to defend their gates. If the gates held, there was hope, however slim, of winning back the walls, but if the gates fell, it was over. Conan, he was fighting many of the Aquilonians off, but he burned to be at the gates when they fell. He wanted to be a part of it. But then Conan heard his grandfather, Connacht, scream out, "Crom, take you bastards! You'll not see me fall!" Connacht had been stabbed with a spear through his belly. Conan jumped into action to aid his grandfather, and he killed a few more Aquilonian soldiers, cutting off their heads. Conan then inspected his grandfather's wounds and helped hold them in place. Conan told his grandfather, "Here, press this cloth against the gash. Men such as these will not be your death." And as Conan was tending to his grandfather's wounds, he heard a great cry go up from his Cimmerian brothers. They had already taken the gates, and they had fallen. Conan didn't even manage to be a part of that. His grandfather told him, "We've won, young Conan. We've won." Conan, a little surprised, replied, "It's over? Just like that?" Connacht to this said, "Not over, but won. Such is the way with battles. So often they turn on what occurs when you are not looking. Go. The end is in sight, but must be reached. There is much killing yet to be done." Conan, he then leapt back into battle, and killed many more Aquilonians. The Aquilonians continued to fight on, but it was a useless battle now. They were done for. Some of the Aquilonians ran off. The Cimmerians debated if they should go after them, but it was decided to not bother. They will carry back the tales of the Cimmerian devils and how only madmen would seek their land. A long night of killing was ahead of them, and in the dawn, the Cimmerians burned the fort down to the ground. And the day after that, the Cimmerians then scoured the fort for prizes of war. Things to take back home. They collected short swords and spear tips. Conan saw what his fellow Cimmerian brothers took, and he noticed they sought what only was immediately useful, what fit their needs as they were, with little or no thought of what could be. Arrows and arrowheads, for example, were discarded. Cimmerians did not use the bow, and had no interest in learning it. Conan was a little disappointed that Cimmerians didn't seem to think ahead. Conan continued to look for prizes in the burned-down Aquilonian fort, and among the dead bodies he saw his old girlfriend, Ariane, the daughter of Alcibiades. Conan knelt over her body and said her name, Ariane. He wanted to say something to her, but she could not hear him, and in any case, Conan did not know what to say, so he left. Eventually, Conan and his Cimmerian brothers returned to the northern hills. They were boisterous and loud. The men perfected their wartime stories that they would tell the women and children, and Conan, he tended to his grandfather's wounds and stayed silent. Finally, as Conan and everyone else returned home, champions of war, Conan was asked a word by Gial's father, Garad, the father of the boy he killed many years ago. Garad told Conan, "The blood debt is more than paid, Conan. Gialchad's death will always be with us, his mother and I, but you are a man of honor and a fine clan brother. Come back to the village and live as one of us again." Conan thanked him. The celebrations began in the village, and no one spoke of Gialchad or the wizard or the girl Ariane ever again. Conan, he returned to his father's hut and tended to his grandfather's wounds. The old man, Connacht, would not recover from them, but no one spoke of that either. No one needed to. Still, for the remaining time that Connacht lived, him and his grandson talked long into the night. Connacht would tell Conan more stories of his adventures, his time in Zingara, Poitian, Nemedia. Conan asked his grandfather, "Ophir, tell me again of Ophir." Conan's grandfather spun a fantastical tale of his time in Ophir, about their fighting and the jewels they took and the women they bedded. Conan asked his grandfather that whenever he went to all of these places, he always came back home. Wherever you traveled, you always came back. Connacht to this answered, "Aye. My heart was here, I suppose, in these hills. My clan was here, and In time, your grandmother and your father and his brothers. Conan left his grandfather's side to get him more ale. His grandfather told him, "Oh, Crom, for some Kothian wine. I'd die tonight, and gladly, if I could taste but once more that rich red Kothian wine. But go swiftly, and I'll tell you again of Hyperborea, the fabled land beyond the north wind." As Conan returned, though, his grandfather had passed away. In time, all stories must end. A funeral for old Connacht was eventually held. One day, Conan looked at some of the things that Ariane left in her camp, where her and her father lived in the forest. Conan thought of these things, worn and used by people born far, far from here, made by men with other skills than those valued in cold Cimmeria, made by men who prayed to strange gods, who saw different vistas, who loved and fought and drank and died like men everywhere, like their daughters. Conan then thought of Cimmeria, and leather and meat and metal and grain. It would be so easy to just give into it, to the routine. There was tomorrow's hunt, the herd to call, there was much to do. There always would be, and nothing would change. Some must hunt here, and some must toil, and some must give orders so the men must do their tasks. But who commanded Conan? Who led where he would follow? Conan eventually decided he would leave home. His mother, Fiala, asked, "You're leaving?" Conan answered, "Yes." She questioned, "Will you be coming back?" Conan did not give a response to this. As Conan began to walk, Fiala asked another question. "Where? Which way are you bound?" Conan, he walked on further. He walked by the grave where his grandfather was buried. His grandfather's heart had been here, leather and meat and metal and grain. It was enough for some, but it was not enough for Conan. Conan told his grandfather's grave, "I'm bound north and east, grandfather. I'm bound north and east." And so Conan went into the wide Hyborian world to carve his legend across the face of the shining jeweled land. He found the world different from that of his grandfather's tales, but he found wonders aplenty, amid darker nights and bloodier days. And he did not return to dwell in the land of his birth. Though his travels brought him back to it, it was only rarely, and he came as a stranger whose heart lay elsewhere. Decades later, when scholars would write of Conan's early years, they said that when Conan crested the hill that took him out of the sight of their village, he never looked back. Alright, so that was the debut volume of Dark Horse's Conan Run, and I thought this intro volume was a triumph. So good. The artwork, I thought, really told the story well. I thought Kurt Busiek's writing was really good. Some of the narration that he wrote was very poetic, just the way he worded things to get things across was fantastic. The overall story was entertaining, just seeing Conan's early years, seeing his tribe, his family, him battling the wolves, Ariane and Alcibiades, the Aquilonians coming in, and Conan driving them off. That was all great stuff. But beyond that, I think this volume is actually really deep. This is a coming-of-age story that, even though, we don't maybe kill people like Conan does, I think it is very relatable. So a few moments in here I want to point out. One is when Conan saves one of the tribe leaders from the wolves. And the tribe leader invites Conan afterwards to come and drink with him and the adults. And they drink and they share tales. And Conan, even as a little kid there, was so happy. He felt like he was one with the tribe. And he kind of says something along the lines of like, is there anything better than this? And, I think we can all relate to that feeling of belonging in the world. Later on, we have Conan and his grandfather sharing stories. And I think we can all relate to having someone in our lives that is older than us that we have a bond with, and then eventually they pass away, and trying to move on from that. So I thought that was touching too. And then I thought the part that really hit the most to me is near the end of this volume, when the Aquilonians have been driven off, And then Conan witnesses the Cimmerians scavenging the Aquilonian fort. And he's kind of disappointed that they're not taking things that could be useful. They're not taking the arrowheads. They're not taking things that could better them in the future. They're just taking things that are more immediately usable. And Conan is disappointed. And he feels like, you know what? This is his home, Cimmeria, but he wants to leave. He doesn't feel like he belongs with them anymore. And me, like many others out there who have left their hometown and now live somewhere else, I think that's a feeling we can all relate to. Conan, he says, these things, worn and used by people born far, far from here, made by men with other skills than those valued in cold Cimmeria. So, he's saying that there are things outside of Cimmeria that he would maybe like to be a part of. And he says, he could stay in Cimmeria. We could all stay in our hometown. He says, leather and meat and metal and grain, it would be easy to give into it. There was always tomorrow's hunt and the herd to call. There was much to do. There always would be. And nothing would change. And Conan, he wants to witness change and experience the world. So I know, really deep, sort of expressing why people would maybe not want to stay at their home forever. And then when he leaves, at the end of this volume, he leaves. And then it is mentioned, he did return to dwell in the land of his birth. Though his travels brought him back to it, it was only rarely. And he came as a stranger whose heart lay elsewhere. So it's kind of saying that, like, Conan, he left home. And yes, he did return back to it at times, like we all might do. But it wasn't home anymore to him. His home lay elsewhere. That's deep stuff for Conan, man. And I think it is so relatable, feeling that, like, you can't go home again. Your family, some friends might be there, but it's not home to you anymore. So really deep stuff. A really great debut volume. I'm going to give this one a 10 out of 10. I thought it was amazing. Thank you all for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be back next week with Volume 1, where we will see Conan's first adventures when he leaves home and heads north.